ghostly apparitions passing from one realm to the next. From the Great Pyramids of Egypt to what lies in the depths of Loch Ness. From Bigfoot to Atlantis, they are all mysteries waiting to be solved. Join host Lori Hood, Jeff Stewart, Ricky, and Lauren Smith as they search for the truth on Nightcrawler's Bigfoot Radio.
Welcome everyone to Nightcrawler's Bigfoot Radio. It's October 10th, 2016, and fall.
Sorry.
I'm here tonight with Jeff Stewart and Lauren and Ricky Smith, and somebody is breathing very heavy.
I'm sorry. It's me. I just was listening to the intro, bobbing along, and then I almost punched my toddler in the face because he just appeared next to my face.
Oh, my goodness.
He's supposed to be in bed, and all of a sudden he snuck up on me, scared the crap out of me. So, anyway, go ahead.
Okay. Well, anyway, we're all here tonight. How's everyone doing?
Good, how are you?
Everybody don't speak at once.
Right.
Well, Jeff sent me some footage the other day, and I don't know if he cares if I talk about it, but it was eagle cam from an eagle's nest. You know what I'm talking about,
yeah.
Jeff, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
Was that in Michigan?
I believe it was Michigan. Pennsylvania. Was it Pennsylvania or Michigan? It may have been Pennsylvania.
Okay, because I know there was another one, and it came out like on October 7th, and it was very, very interesting. I didn't know quite what to make of it, but it was the cat high in a tree, but it was shining, pointed towards the ground, and they believe they may have caught a Sasquatch walking along the ground there. And it's very interesting. Really, really is. I don't, I was kind of real quick to debunk it at first, but the more I've looked at it, the more I'm wondering if it could be the real thing. So,
well,
it's out.
Here's the thing about any footage like that. It's too blurry. It's too far away. It's too everything to definitively say it's anything other than what it is. But you take the surrounding circumstances. This was an eagle cam. This camera was, 60, 70 feet up in a tree. It was not purposefully looking for Bigfoot. It wasn't doing any of that. It was up there. Not many people even knew it was there. So whatever this was walking around in the middle of the woods somewhere, dark math. Could it have been somebody stumbling around down there? Sure it could.
Yeah.
But it's just a very interesting bit of footage because this person's, if it is a person, they're just out in the woods walking through the brush and doing things. That's totally possible. It's just interesting. It's very interesting.
I thought so, too. And what an interesting idea. Now, I've heard of people doing that before, climbing up in a tree and then attaching a game trail camera from the bottom of a limb, pointing down to an area where they've left a bait station or just to see what they get and everything like that. But I think on game cameras, I honestly have heard it, and from my own experience, they don't work. with Sasquatch. But a regular camera like that Eagle Cam is just a little tiny camera, and I think it probably only takes day footage, probably. So, I don't know. Just interesting.
Well, saying like that, you said about, cameras not working on Bigfoot. One of the theories that I've been working on for probably the better part of 10 years, and without a Bigfoot to actually test it on, it's kind of hard to, get concrete proof. But there are certain animals that have an extrasensory perception on the bioelectrical range. Sharks, platypus, to an extent, even land animals such as elephants and a few others can sense certain electrical impulses. And one of my theories that I've been working on for years is that it's possible that Sasquatch, Bigfoot, has one of these sensory perceptions that can detect cameras, things like that, because they are putting out an electrical impulse whenever, that infrared, when that beam is going across and something crosses it, in order to generate that beam, it has to be utilizing the batteries, the electrical impulses. So, kind of just agreeing with what you said, it's trail cams really don't work.
Well, I always thought it was because they could see the light, the infrared. I always thought they had infrared capabilities. But
I have cameras that have no infrared on them. They're called blackout cameras, and they utilize no infrared whatsoever. There's no visible light source at all. And still get no pictures, but at the same time, I have deer that will look dead in this camera, be looking dead at it, and there is right before the picture's taken. And so you're sitting there going, that deer had to have sensed something. This camera is totally digital. There's no mechanism. There's no moving parts inside this camera or anything. It makes no recognizable, audible sounds whatsoever, and it has no visible flashes or any light source visible, but yet even my deer will look dead into the lens of the camera.
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting.
What cameras is it that you're talking about?
Oh gosh, I have a lot of different ones. I have some Reconics. I have some Moultries. I probably have about 8 or 10 different brands.
Okay. Wow. Well, you know what?
I've seen a lot of game trail cameras or pictures where white-tailed deer, coyotes, coons, they'll just look directly at the camera, like the instant that a flash is going off, or that the picture is being taken. And they're digital nowadays, so it's not like a shutter's opening to expose filament.
It's quite like a phone. When you take a picture with the phone, it makes no noise unless you have a notification on it. It's absolutely fine. Well,
but at the same time, though, it's quiet, but power has to be transferred. There's a battery.
Oh, yeah.
You have a power source, something, even though it's all electrical, those electrical impulses have to power up, have to send that power out to, whatever's being powered up. And so, it, just like I said, it's some of what I've been working on, using different types of cameras and different power sources and things like that to determine if other animals, not just Bigfoot, but deer, coyotes, hogs, raccoons, possums, everything that I can get on a camera, to test them and see, are they looking at the camera because they're sensing something, or are they looking at it for some other reason?
Right.
Okay. I was just texting Lauren real quick because I'm still hearing that relic sound like a vibration. I don't know. Is anyone else hearing it? Yeah. Okay. I'm glad to know it's not just me now. Okay. But I tell you what, we need to go ahead and get to our guest because he has got a lot to share.
Yes.
So I'm wondering if somebody has the show on speakerphone, that could be what's causing this.
Has the show on speakerphone? No, I've got you on my speakerphone. Is that? Do you want me to do the handheld?
Let's see if that makes a difference because it could be the vibration that we're hearing.
Oh, it has
Hello.
Is that better?
Yes, that's what it was. We figured it out.
Awesome. I had you on speakerphone. This is Dr. Sentell.
All these Texas big mouths over here, just vibrating that speakerphone.
Well, this is going to work better because I don't have to have my neck cranked at a funny angle to talk at the phone. So this is going to work better for me too.
Awesome. Okay, well, Lauren is going to go ahead and read the bio really quickly, and then we're just going to go straight into the interview. How about that, Will? Go ahead,
Sounds
Lauren.
good to me.
Okay. Sorry, hold on. Blog Talk is really just being nice to me tonight. That's sarcasm.
Would you like to read it?
I'm reading it. Thank you. Okay. Night Caller's Bigfoot Radio begins the 2016-2017 season with a very special guest tonight. We welcome our dear friend, Dr. Samuel Webb Sentell of Louisiana. Webb is a neuropsychologist with a PhD from Vanderbilt University and has been the principal as well as co-author on publications regarding animal behavior. When he is not in his Shreveport, Louisiana clinic, he may be found on a mule or in a canoe exploring habitats or large
anomalous
hominids have been reported. He concentrates his research in an area known as the Big Piney Woods, which stretches from Fouke, Arkansas, through northern Louisiana, East Texas, and to the Big Thicket of Texas. Webb has made numerous excursions to locations where sightings and reports occur. Webb does not consider himself a Bigfoot researcher per se. He is an ethologist who happens to be interested in not only participating in the scientific recognition, but also the cognitive development of Sasquatch. Dr. Sentell can be reached at drsentell@gmail.com, or he can be found on his Facebook page. Thank you for joining us tonight for this great show.
Wow.
Thank you.
What a great intro. Thank you.
Welcome, Webb. We're so glad that you came on tonight.
It's good to be back. This is you guys are exciting. I mean, even just the theme music got my blood going. got all excited to be back again. This is wonderful. Thank you.
Well, I'm excited to have you on. I know Jeff is too, because he agrees with me that you're a pretty sensational person, and we really enjoy talking to you. So you were at Hanobi.
Yes.
I'm just going to jump right to that. You were actually giving a presentation there at Hanobi.
That's right. I presented for the second time at Hanobi. I was very honored to get invited back, and as a matter of fact, they scheduled me for next year. So I've really got I think I need to come hang out with Jeff to get some exciting new stuff or something. But it's a wonderful little festival, and
we all want to hang out with Jeff.
Yeah. You might even see a panther or something, if you hang out with Jeff.
I tell you what, I've been spending a lot of time away from the woods this summer. It's just been too hot, and honestly, nothing's been moving. Really, it's been hard. We had the floods that came in and ran everything out of the woods that was in the woods, and then when the floods quit and everything tried to go back to its correct order in nature,
right?
Now we're in the middle of a drought. Everything's just powder, so it's been terrible.
Yeah. yeah. I took a break myself, and actually I think that did me a lot of good. But being able to go back and present again at Hanobi, I got a lot of new inspiration. And we had a strange thing happen at Hanobi. This gentleman came up on day one, and we were eating breakfast, and Farland Huff was the guy that organized Hanobi, and he sat down at our table, and he said, I've got something in the truck I'd like to give to somebody. And he happened to have a Bigfoot fingernail, or he claimed it was a Sasquatch fingernail, and he had a urine specimen. So we were gifted, so to speak, with a couple of strange and unusual things. So we really and M.K. Davis has the fingernail, and Farland currently has the urine specimen, and we're trying to figure out, what's possible that we can do with it. But I think the fingernail is going to be the more lucrative item of the two. But anyway, it was a strange event to kick the festival off. So, but if you all haven't made it in a couple of years, I would urge you to come back next year. And sometimes people even have unusual things happen around the camp because it's, as you know, it's right in the middle of a very, very active site.
Absolutely.
All of Hanobi is. That's the way Hanobi got on the map, as you might recall.
Yes. The story about that is there was was actually Mike Humphreys and his brother.
Yes.
Had a place, and the family was literally under attack. Apparently, they had moved right into a Bigfoot territory, and they were, and the story goes that they actually shot one.
That's right. I think they were,
Yeah.
There were a lot of deer there, and I think the Bigfoot were coming up, raiding the freezer and getting deer meat and things like that. And so, it just got very complex and confusing there for a while.
Yes, and even the BFRO was called, and of course that wasn't, from what I understand, that wasn't handled correctly, but it was just really interesting. The whole story is almost incredible. But every time I've ever heard it told by this individual, Mr. Mike Humphreys, it's the same. And the story never changes.
Right.
So I think he is telling the truth. So, okay, well, tell us what you talked about in Hanobi, if you don't mind covering that.
Well, I've covered the same topics that I had done in the past, and I just expanded them a little bit and went into a little more depth. As you know, I was lucky enough way back in several years ago to be involved in the Genome Project. It was originally called the Erickson Project, and then, excuse me, we collected 112 different samples that were purportedly Bigfoot or Sasquatch samples, and Melba Ketchum received these and did her best to analyze them. And at the time, I was also invited by the Society for Scientific Exploration, commonly called the SSE, to present a paper on what I had been doing in that area. But at that time, I was under what you might call a gag order. I was not allowed to say very much about what was going on with the Sasquatch Project. So in 2012 in Colorado, I presented my research to the SSE, and I said, I really can't say. At that time, I could not say that Dr. Ketchum thought that this was a human hybrid. So then I went back in 2015 and presented it in Washington, D.C., the follow-up, and I also presented the results of a series of interactions that I had with some intelligent creature in the woods, and I'll probably the best thing I can probably do for tonight is to go into detail about that. So I presented originally on day one. I presented how I got involved with the Ketchum Project, how I found the scat sample, and subsequently the hair that was included in Dr. Ketchum's work, and she she did find it had a Y chromosome, and so that was sort of chapter one. And then I moved into instead of doing dozens of locations all over the piney woods, I began to concentrate on two specific locations that we thought were particularly fruitful to do more of a habituation paradigm. And so these two locations proved to be pretty fruitful. And the second location, the one that at one location, I have a landowner that lives there with his wife, and it's very remote and a very nice situation. But since they're there, I don't go out there quite as much as I do the other site. So at the other site, I set up. I tried to. Well, the first thing that happened is I had a tree pushed over. I was camping out way up in this wilderness area, and it took me a while to really get comfortable doing the solo camping. But I explained to the participants that I got influenced by the Robert W. Morgan method, which is it's the Field Researcher's Guide to Bigfoot.
Yes.
Let's see if I'm. It's called the Bigfoot Observer's Field Manual by Robert W. Morgan, if folks are interested. But basically, he says what you need to do if you want to have an encounter is you go where the Sasquatch have been reported, and you go alone in the woods at night and leave your light off and your gun in the truck. And it's a little bit hard to do. But after taking one tiny step at the time, you can get fairly comfortable. But I wouldn't recommend people just go into any woods anywhere at any time. I do this sort of systematically, and I get comfortable. I was warned that the Sasquatch would probably be tricky and test me, and indeed, one night I was there at my camp, and it was about 2 o'clock in the morning, and it's kind of hard to sleep, under those circumstances, but I was just about to drift off to sleep, and a tree got pushed over less than 100 yards from me. Seemed like it was 40 to 60 yards, and it just cracked and went over. There was no wind. It was about 75, 78 degrees, and then I felt my guts vibrating. So I was quite intimidated, and I began to talk to whatever kind of creature this was, and the apparent, I thought it was infrasound that was causing the viscera to vibrate that way. And as I began talking gently and friendly to whatever was out there, my belly stopped vibrating, and it was as if the strange feeling. People will tell you that infrasound makes you feel kind of weird, and that weird feeling went away. It went away. So that was my first experience at this place, and I've had 5 trees pushed over near me, twice with witnesses. But then I had my kayak bivouacked at this particular spot, and I noticed that something was rifling through my canned goods. And so I started putting food items out. And at first, nothing ate the food. In fact, I had an apple that literally rotted off the tree. Nothing would touch it. And then finally, something started eating some of the items. And this subject, let's call it, liked sweet foods and began to eat these homemade apple fritters that I was putting out. And so I just kept the encounter going, and finally, and I would try different things, and some things it wouldn't eat. One night I didn't have access to the homemade apple fritters, and I put a very processed apple strudel, one of these apple strudels that you can get that has all the artificial ingredients, and it took one bite, it threw it to the ground, and there was only a few ants had touched it the next day. So it showed a clear preference for homemade stuff without a lot of artificial ingredients. And so the next thing that happened was I got hold of some Amish sticky bread, and I put the sticky bread in a jar. And after a few days of it being out there, something came along and unscrewed the jar lid and pulled the sticky bread out and ate the sticky bread. And this is really an exciting moment for me. And
yes, I imagine.
Yes, and on my way out, so I reloaded everything, and as I'd come up to the food plot to check it out, something was apparently in the process of eating the very juicy apple that I'd put out there, because it was half gone, and a great big drop of apple juice was on the bottom of the apple. So, I thought as I walked up, I heard something receding back toward the bayou. And so I reloaded the fritter and took some pictures, and I was walking out, and as I was about 50 yards down the trail, something at my 2 o'clock position screamed at me the loudest, just largest vocalization that you can imagine. It literally doubled me over. It was about 3 o'clock in the morning, and I was by myself, and I thought, oh, my goodness, this is my moment of truth. And it was the hardest thing I could ever imagine, but I made myself sit cross-legged in the middle of the trail, and I started tapping.
No.
Yeah, and I tapped on my walking stick, and something tapped back, and I tapped twice, and something tapped twice. And so I played this little tapping game for, it seemed like probably longer than it was, but it was a few minutes, and then I realized, oh, the fritter. I just put the apple fritter in the tree. So, again, the hardest walk in my life was walking back 50 yards to the fritter tree. But I walked back, and sure enough, the fritter was gone. So, and I think what I had there, I think I had a mother and a youngster, and I think the youngster was in the process of eating the apple when I came up, and mother was down the bayou bank a little ways, and I got accidentally in between them. And so it was a I call it David Copperfield in the fritter tree, because they misdirected. I think she misdirected me with this scream, which was very effective, I'll tell you. And Junior got the fritter and took off. So that's one of the closest calls I've had. And then shortly after that, what I was trying to do, and I've had the fritter taken 3 times while I was in the territory with once pretty close, and once as I got back to the truck, I heard a loud vocalization. I went back, and the fritter had been taken. So my goal was to start a game where I put the fritter, you holler at me, and I'll come and I'll put another fritter. And so, but they didn't cooperate with that. There was about a week later, I'm walking back, and I've got the extra fritter in my knapsack. And I stop, and I'm holding it up in the moonlight. It's the middle of the night, and I'm by myself, and I can hear something walking toward me. It's something bipedal, and it's large, and it's slowly crunching its way to me. And I can tell you, I was very ambivalent about that whole thing. And apparently,
how much light did you have? Was it pitch black, or? It was
a waning gibbous moon. It was about a little less than a half a moon, and I had a sliver of moonlight, and I'm standing like the Statue of Liberty holding this fritter up, and I'm going, I'm not going to tell you, but it involved an expletive, okay? I'm saying to myself over and over, oh, blank, oh, blank, oh, blank. Anyway, and so whoever it was didn't stick their face out, which was, the next step in this thing. But so those are the closest I've had. And then what I got the bright idea, and just, you look around on the net and you see what people are doing, and it gives you ideas. And I really appreciate that. But somebody had used marbles, and so I began to bring non-nutritive items. And so the first little thing was a little tiny toy turtle. It was a very well-made little turtle. And I think, Jeff, didn't you suggest honeycomb at one point, Jeff?
Yes,
I think Jeff told me to use honeycomb. And so I put some honey with honeycomb out there, and I put the turtle on top of it. And whoever it was grabbed this honeycomb and took the turtle as well. Now, a coyote, a hog, they're probably not going to tote a little toy plastic turtle away and carry it off. But the turtle was gone. And so this happened like in December. And it's all on my Facebook for folks that are interested. And so I began to experiment with little toys, usually toy animals, and my subject wouldn't really take stuff that looked real fake-o, but if it was very realistic looking, it would generally be taken. And so then I began to put out marbles. And it's called, on my Facebook page, it's called the Boo Radley game, because as you know, Boo Radley was the character in To Kill a Mockingbird, that played by Robert Duvall, who would put stuff in the knothole of the tree for Scout to find. And so we began this exchange, and I began to put marbles out. And the first time I put the marbles out, I came and I left a doodle pad. You guys know what a doodle pad is. And I drew a triangle because I've had a lot of interactions that involve triangles. And so I put a triangle and I put the marbles in a line at the bottom of the doodle pad. When I came back, the marbles were juxtaposed and set out in a triangle exactly like the triangle that I'd left. And so this started the marble game. And this subject would take the marbles and then bring back one, like a yellow one, and then it would replace the yellow one with an orange one, and then I put a large blue and a small blue, and it took the small blue and left the large blue, and then I put another toy animal with the blue, and the big blue disappeared, and the culmination was, and this went on from, late winter until it flooded in the springtime. And you can see it all on my Facebook. But the culmination was the toy turtle that had been gone approximately 3 months was returned along with the big blue marble that had been gone about a week. And that was to be the highlight. So, something has kept secreted this little tiny toy turtle and brought it back to me months later, along with something that the subject had taken about a week ago. So, and it's a crazy game, and it's either, I think it's either what we think it is, or some forest ranger is really bored and doesn't have anything to do but be out there at 3 o'clock in the morning messing with me. So, but you guys were talking about the game cam, and so I wanted to figure out if I was being pranked by a forest ranger or something, but I didn't want to put out game cams because I didn't want to take a chance that this would insult our locals and in the game, because every time I've taken my FLIR camera out there, the activity goes away for a week or so. So what I did is I put some thread, like the old trick from Vietnam. I put some dark thread, some brown thread about knee level on the trail in at several places, so that if there's somebody walking in, it's about 4/10 of a mile into the woods where this site was. And if somebody was walking that trail at night, I would assume they would have tripped the thread. And so, but the phenomenon continued even though the thread was not broken. So, and it's all on my Facebook. If you look for the Boo Radley game, you'll see it. And but anyway, that's the highlight of the interactions that I've been able to get involved with so far. And I'm trying to figure out what to do next. But you guys are right. Game cams are a problem. There is a guy in East Texas that has had some luck shooting into a mirror. Do y'all know about that guy? Have you seen that one?
No, I'm maybe Jeff has.
This guy, M.K. Davis, a lot of people come to M.K. with films and videos, and he brought a bunch of videos to M.K. to analyze, and you can see that he has some of his best success when he has the camera facing away from the direction the subject is going to come in, and he's shooting into a large mirror. And the Sasquatch apparently think the camera is videotaping away, and they'll approach from behind. And he's got some pretty good shots of a Sasquatch crossing a fence, and it's in East Texas, so it's not far from you guys.
Wow.
Yeah, if you go to M.K. Davis's YouTube page, you'll see it, and you can. It's one of the ones is called Whitey's Run. It's a white Bigfoot that makes a track star, look like he's moving pretty slow. And then there's another one where apparently a Sasquatch takes a camera out of the eye of a teddy bear. He's going to be clever and hope the Sasquatch picks up the teddy bear and looks at it, and he's going to get a face shot. Well, you can see the hair hanging down, and the subject picks up the teddy bear, reaches into the eye socket, and pulls out the camera and sets it on the bench, and then takes the teddy bear and does whatever it's going to do. So, fascinating stuff, you know. So, but yeah, they're very, very camera shy, and somehow, as Jeff was very eloquently describing, they somehow are able to detect cameras in just amazing ways. So, but who knows? I mean, I don't know what I'm going to do next, but I may try to do something else. But you know, it's always difficult to outfox these guys or get them to interact with you. I really thought that I was going to get the fritter game going, where I was going to give them a fritter and they holler and I got it, and I'll bring them another one, and we'll play that game for, you know, as long as they want to, but they would not cooperate. So,
well, I don't think you should beat yourself up too much, actually.
Well,
Webb, because you're actually interacting with them. I think it's wonderful.
Well, one of the things that I've found, and I know this goes right along with what you're saying, Webb, is these creatures are a very playful creature. Once they've accepted your presence as not being a threat, and that they have some level of trust with you, because I know on my property, I've sat there and played catch basically with a stick, with one or more in the pitch black darkness, you know. I've been sitting in, especially this was witnessed by a couple of people last year in July, sitting at the base of a tree. We're sitting there, and a stick comes flying in towards me, and it lands, and they're looking up in the tree, and I'm going, "What are you looking for?" And they're like, "Stick just fell." I said, "It came in sideways." And so I pick the stick up, throw the stick back, and then here comes the stick right back. And for like 20, 30 minutes, we can sit there, and I can throw the stick back and forth. And there's nobody out there. You know, I mean, I've taken people and shown them and said, "Look, you know, we're in the middle of thousands of acres of Sabine River bottom. The only road in here is the road you and I came in on. If someone came in here, they had to walk through miles of swamp and everything else to get in here to hoax us or play a trick on us or whatever." And we've done that. And right along the lines with what you're talking about, you know, I've done some of the real similar things when leaving molasses. I like to use molasses a lot. It's got a really good smell to it. It's a really good smell, and it stays. You can actually set up, I've set up molasses drips. I take a gallon plastic jug, fill it with molasses. I cut a 1x6 about 2 feet long and put it on a 45-degree angle at the bottom of a tree. Tie that jug up above it. Put a small hole with your pocket knife in the bottom of the jug where it just drips down onto that board. And a lot of the time when I'm trying to do that, molasses is so sticky, I'm getting hair samples, because everything that comes up and touches it or does anything to that board, they're leaving hair samples, they're leaving some sort of DNA a lot of times, and I'm able to get samples. But what I have found is that I have come back before and something has taken the jug.
Oh, yeah.
This jug
that makes you wonder.
Yes, this jug that was tied to a tree by me, and I mean, I'm a very astute student of knot tying. You know, you're not just going to walk up there and pull a string, and you know, something has untied these knots, and we're talking. In order to untie them, you've got to have very high dexterity in your fingers. And
yes, indeed.
And on top of that, you've got to have fingers.
That's right.
Yeah.
And
a thumb.
The jugs are like totally gone. And so I've just got this visual image in my head of, this Bigfoot, walking through the woods with my gallon jug of molasses untucked under his arm, smiling, going, got another one, sucker, And,
right.
But then I can turn around and put the jugs out and put a camera. And I don't just mount a camera to a tree and walk away.
Right.
I totally camouflage my cameras. They're brushed in.
Right.
Sometimes my cameras are sitting, a foot, maybe even 2 foot up in a bush, things like that. And I put my camera out, and I come back, and the deer have been there, the coyotes have been there, the raccoons and possums have been there, but my big friends have not.
Yes.
And I can leave the camera there, turn the power off, remove the batteries from the camera, come back 5 to 6 days later, and the evidence of my big friends is there. The signs of them frequenting it are there by removing the batteries, and that's where my research is going with this, maybe being able to sense some sort of an electrical.
Well, now, you know what you could do, Jeff? When I presented at Honobi, one of the things I presented from the SSE was why does the tree cross the road? And I began to notice that before hunting season, trees seem to leap across the trails, particularly ATV trails, and they don't fall the other way. And so I figured out how to do what's called a chi-square analysis. It's a statistical test, and you can make the hypothesis that says these trees are falling randomly, and then you can do a chi-square, and you can show that it's not a random phenomenon. It's not. So you could do that with your battery. You could do, you could leave the camera with the batteries out and disconnect it, as you say, and then you could do control it the other way, so that your test case is looking at whether you get phenomena with the batteries in and the thing's hooked up, and you could collect probably I think as low as 20 samples, and we could run a chi-square, and we could probably prove that this is not happening by chance alone. Now, the next thing you'd say is it a Sasquatch? Well, we can't say for sure it's a Sasquatch, but we can then make a case that you're way out in the woods. There's no reasonable way that anybody could be doing that and pranking you, and I think that you would have something that would be it's a recognized test of a hypothesis using statistical methodology, and I think it would get some attention.
I got one for
you.
So, one of the
I'll help you do that. I'll help you do that if you can collect that data.
That's what I was fixing to say. It might be advantageous if we were to get together at a future date and sit down and discuss this for real and
how to do it right.
Because for goodness sakes, we're 30 minutes away from one another where we live.
Right. So we can definitely do that.
I'm about 40 miles from Shreveport, right here.
Right. Well, I would love to get with you, and we can do that pretty quick and easy. And it's a statistical analysis that lends itself to yes/no questions. On and off conditions. We got a camera on, camera off condition, and then you can show that some creature in the woods is able to detect when this thing is hooked up and got batteries and when it doesn't, and so that in itself is interesting,
And I've got actually close to a terabyte of nothing but photographs over the past 4 years from trail cameras. These trail cameras have been mounted in the exact same locations. They have not been moved. It goes along with my Southern Panther research project that Chester Moore and I have been doing. So while we've been doing the big cat research, I've been doing the Sasquatch research right along with the cameras because they're just taking pictures. And
you may have enough already.
Everything is cataloged by date, everything. And there's just so many pictures. And like I said, you've got a camera that has no visible flash whatsoever, no light source.
How many times have you set it up? Really? How many times have you set it up where you noticed that the subjects were coming back after you disassembled the camera? How many times have you done that?
Whenever I started that about a year ago. I got to noticing that in this particular piece of property I have, the creatures have become not creatures to me. They have become individuals. And I'm not going to say anything about habituation. I have not habituated or any of that. I'm not even trying any of that. These creatures have more than likely habituated me, to tell you the truth. Because they recognize that I belong in these woods. I've been going to this particular patch of woods since I was 6 months of age.
Is this where the one jumped out of the tree? Is this where the young one jumped out of the tree?
Yes. I have been on this particular piece of property my entire life. My smell has been in those woods forever. Therefore, even with a gun in my hands, I can have interaction. They know I'm no threat to them. And so on that piece of property, whenever they're that comfortable with me and have that much interaction with me, and I go in there and I can't even get a photo of them on a trail camera, I'm going, okay, what's going on? And they're eating my stuff. They're getting my stuff. How are they coming in here and getting this? And I'm not getting a picture. They know somehow they have listened to that camera or sensed it, because I have my timer set where it takes a picture like every 30 seconds or every 5 minutes or whatever. And they know that that's getting a picture of those deer or those hogs or whatever, and they can sense that electrical charge is going off. So they know that it just took a picture. I can go in there and I can get whatever I want to, and I can get out of there before it can reset and take a picture.
That's amazing. Yeah. So they've got your stuff figured out about as well as you've got it figured out. they know what to do.
Here's what gets me, and I know I want to get your opinion on this. I'm a very smart person. I've taken lots of IQ tests, things like that. Usually my IQ tests range somewhere between the high 150s and the low 160s. These creatures are as smart as I am, if not smarter.
They are very smart. There's no question.
I'm not saying
it's a different kind of smart.
I'm not saying they're going to sit down and talk theoretical physics with you, or they're going to do things like that. I'm talking about a genius, intellect that is born of necessity, that is born of the woods, that is...
It's a woodscraft, right. It's a woodscraft.
Of a different level. I mean, I've been in the woods since I was born, but I don't even have a tenth of what they have. And
I call it the Lurgan Sahib game. I don't know if you're familiar with Rudyard Kipling, but there's a book called Kim by Rudyard Kipling, and there's a guy, he's teaching him to be a spy, and his name is Lurgan Sahib. And Lurgan Sahib does this thing where he puts rocks and objects in a box, and Kim has to figure out what's missing, what's been moved, what's been changed, and it's very subtle. And I think these guys play games like that with each other. I think they do things in the woods and to see if their conspecifics can notice what's natural and what's not, what's been changed. And I think they're just super subtle about what they're able to notice and what they're able to pay attention to. And I think they test us, and they say, just like the marble game, I did this, and did you notice that? Or, I mean, I probably didn't notice 80% of what they were doing, and they were probably testing me, and I was like, Ned in the first reader. But I think they do that. I think they have a real strange and funny sense of humor, too.
I really think they do. And here's, I want to ask your opinion on this. This is something that's really, really neat. At the beginning of the summer, I took my 17-year-old son and my 19-year-old adopted son. I took them down camping in our cabin on that same piece of property that I've had all my encounters on and everything.
Right.
And we're camping. We're inside of our camp house. We're fishing, doing things like that. We're not hunting or anything, but we did have, firearms with us.
Right.
Places loaded with hogs. And about midnight, we're laying in the cabin, lights out, the whole 9 yards. It's pitch quiet. And all of a sudden you hear a rock be like hurled into the river. Where my cabin is, you can spit and hit the river. We're like 5 feet from the edge of the riverbank.
Yeah.
And it's a big, long drop-off. So you hear this huge boulder. It had to have weighed 10, 15 pounds to make the sound that it made.
Right.
The closest rock of that size would have been hundreds of yards from the riverbank. And the only rocks that are there are the rocks that we have hauled in to fix the roads and things like that. And sometimes in a load of rock, you get stones that are too big to put in the road, so you just roll them off to the side of the road.
Yeah.
And so it had to have been one of these big rocks.
Right.
After that, we heard that. That woke everybody up really good. You heard that loud ka-chug.
Right.
And then shortly after that, you hear another loud ka-chug, and you can tell it's not a fish jumping. This is something being thrown into the water. When you hear two voices talking back and forth to one another in an incoherent babble, as any layperson would put it. I've come to recognize it, but it's an incoherent babble. And then you can hear something that is walking on 2 legs, because it was dry summer, the leaves are crunchy, walk completely around our cabin 2 to 3 times. Circling.
Right. Yeah.
Then you hear it walk away.
Right. That's
The next morning we get up. My sons are scared to death, and I'm kind of laughing because this happens to me all the time when I go down there.
Right. Right.
And the next morning we get up, and I had left a can of sweet corn we had eaten with our dinner, and about half of that can of sweet corn was eaten, and I just bent the lid back over on the sweet corn, left it sitting on the table.
Right.
You know how whenever you open it with a can opener, you don't open it 100%, you leave just a little tag so that it'll close back.
Yeah.
Something had taken that can of sweet corn and had pulled the top back open on it. Had looked like you turn a Coke up to drink a Coke. It looked like they turned it up and got all the corn out of it.
Right.
And then sat that can back down, perfectly everything right where I had left it, and walked away.
Right. Yeah.
And here's the best thing about that. The next night, I did it again. I left a can of corn.
Right.
And whenever we were listening to the same thing, walking around the cabin, then this had to be a different creature. Or else the first one didn't like corn, because they threw the opened can of corn onto the wall of the cabin.
Oh, wow.
All of a sudden you hear the can of corn just crash, just like you picked it up and threw it with all of your might into the wall of the cabin.
They were wanting spinach.
Wow.
I found out later, because now I still have the lid, that the reason it got mad is it either cut its hand or it cut its lip on the can whenever it opened it or tried to get the corn out. Because on the when I inspected the can, there was a little skin, a little blood, and a little bit of hair caught in the metal on it. And of course, I had that sealed and in the freezer with all my other samples that hopefully one day will get tested.
Right. Yeah, exactly. That is
And now
fascinating.
this is the same place that whenever you were involved with, just like I was, whenever Mr. Collier and them came down and brought the Colonel.
Oh, right.
Down. This is the same property that we were at, that we went to on my place.
Yes, yes, indeed.
Well,
whenever you and I can go, that's where I'm going to take you.
Well, good. Well, I'm looking forward to that. That's going to be high on my to-do list.
Well,
I'll tell you what.
Let's stop right there and take a break real quick. I'm totally
All
out
right.
of coffee, and I gotta have
intermission time.
Intermission. Okay, so we'll be back. Great spot, and Jeff, if you want to pick up on the other side, you go right ahead, and I'll get me something to try to calm this throat down. So we'll be back. All right.
All right.
Welcome back to Night Callers Bigfoot Radio. I'm totally out of breath. I forgot that I brought steaks and put them out in the Yeti in the back of my car. I had to run out there and get them and bring them in, and here we are. Okay. Our guest tonight is Webb Sentell from Louisiana, and him and Jeff have been talking about a project that looks like they're fixing to take up, and it sounds very exciting. So I'm going to let you guys get back to it. Go ahead, Jeff. I'll look at my breath. Is Jeff back? Apparently
Sounds like Jeff's not. Can you hear me okay?
Yes,
can
I
you hear me okay?
Fine.
Okay,
yes.
Good. Well, I'll pick up until Jeff gets back on. What he was talking about is he opened the show talking about how what a lot of us have observed is that they are very skilled at avoiding getting on camera, and the question is, how do they know? And so apparently they're able to somehow detect the electrical operation of this camera. And Jeff said that he has some evidence where the camera's set up and on and running, and nobody goes in front of the camera, and yet when he disassembles it or takes the batteries out so that the camera absolutely won't work, then his subjects then go in front of the camera and get the food or the treats or whatever he's leaving. So what I was saying was that we can do a statistical analysis, and if what he's observing is indeed the phenomenon that we think it is, what we can do is we can prove statistically that this is not happening randomly by chance alone, which means that some entity that lives in the forest is able to detect whether this camera is on or off, and go get the treats when the camera is off. So that's the first step. Now you can't say you can do the statistical test and you can say, aha, we've got significant results. It's what you would call a significant chi-square analysis, and they would say, so we've got a phenomenon. It's like if you were flipping a coin and all of a sudden you flip 35 heads in a row, you might think that the coin is rigged, and you could test the coin just strictly by a statistical analysis like that. And there are recognized ways to do that. And that's the way that you get scientists interested in what you're doing. As a scientist, we like to do statistical t-tests and chi-squares, and we could do that. And then we have to make the case that it couldn't be a hog, it couldn't be a coyote, it couldn't be a deer, it couldn't be anything indigenous to these woods. And of course, some smart aleck scientists are going to say, well, you've got a sociopathic forest ranger that's sneaking in there and scamming you guys. And then we could show a map and show how difficult it is to get in there and how you'd have to hike through, alligator infested swamps and in the Sabine bottom to get there. And we can make a pretty good case that something strange is going on. Now, you can't make the inferential leap to say therefore it's a Sasquatch, but it's certainly implied that it's some very intelligent, hominid kind of being that lives in those woods. And
so in particular with the molasses jug, I mean, the way he has it tied.
Exactly.
There's
And I've had them
that could untie that.
That's exactly right. And that's why I was fascinated with the multiple times that I had my subject unscrewed the jar. And I had two different types of jars there. And you want to say what kind of animal? And I have some evidence that on occasion somebody unscrewed the jar and screwed it back on. So that's a whole nother level, you know.
And see, that's what always intrigued me, was the unscrewing of the lids.
Right.
And because here's the thing. Yeah, an animal rolling it around on the ground might somehow work the lid off, but they're not going to work it back on.
Right. That's exactly right. And here's the other thing. I found on several occasions, particularly early on in this game I was playing with somebody, that the jar lid was screwed on ultra tight a couple of times. So it was as if, you know, how often have you had to say to yourself, lefty loosey, righty tighty? I still say that to myself. And so somebody couldn't figure out which way to do it, and they would accidentally tighten the lid way tight.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And
man.
And my hypothesis was that this was a youngster. My theory is that probably the father doesn't care at all for Junior, doesn't like Junior going to my food stand and all that, probably wants Junior to learn how to hunt the regular way, not rely on humans, don't be eating their fritters, don't be getting, you know, cavities in your teeth. We don't have any Sasquatch dentists. And so I think Junior comes out there and is kind of rebellious and comes to my food plot and eats my stuff. And I think Mama may do it a little bit too. So it may be one of the older ones that was better with undoing the lid, and I think it was Junior that was accidentally taking it the wrong way and leaving it super tight on a couple of occasions. So who knows? You know, it's all speculation, but, you know, and here's the thing they did to me. Now, here's what they finally did to me. And this is in Robert Morgan's book, too. He said at first, when you start interacting with them, they like to try to intimidate you, see if they can run you off and all that sort of stuff. But if you don't run off, and the more stuff they do, then a lot of times they try to bore you out of the woods. And that's what happened to me is I got bored out of the woods. They stopped doing the dramatic stuff and all that, and I just finally didn't know what to do to get them to interact with me anymore. And so... And it could be that after the flood they got involved in doing some other stuff. I think they went to high ground during that flood, and I just during the flood I just had no signs that they were anywhere around. But I do think they've come back now. One of the things that I left was it was a ceramic dove. I was experimenting with the notion that they like naturalistic animal toys better than obviously artificial animal toys. And so I brought this ceramic white dove out there and I put it in the tree. And I came back in a few days and the ceramic dove had been pretty much covered with mud to make it into a brown dove. And I thought about that, you know, there's no the white doves are Java doves. There are no white doves really indigenous around here that I've ever seen. So all the doves are brown, so it looked as if somebody was trying to make this look like a dove that they were familiar with. And then, very recently, the dove, I didn't go out there for a good long while, and the dove was moved from the food plot out to the ATV trail that you come in on. So it was put by the side of the trail as if to say, here's your dove, you know. So, I mean, strange things just keep happening if you give them a chance, you know.
And, you know, it's one of those things where I guess sometimes we look at things with a little bit different eye than other people, because I've had some very, very harsh skeptic people with me in the past, and were experiencing the exact same things I was experiencing, and I'm sitting there going, okay, do you hear those footsteps? You know, that's something walking on two legs, and they're like, oh, there's no way you can tell that. Well, yeah, there is. You know, 40-plus years of hunting, trapping, tracking, all of the things that I do, yeah, I can tell when something's walking on two legs. And so can a lot of other people that have the mindset for it. You know, you can hear it. I've had people out there that hear the noises that I hear, and they say, oh, well, that's just birds. And I'm sitting there going, redbirds aren't calling to one another at 3 o'clock in the morning.
That's right.
No.
That's right.
You know, an owl is not answering a thrush at 3 o'clock in the morning. You know, I'll be sitting on a deer stand or something and have somebody that I'm hunting with, and all of a sudden you hear an owl in the distance a little, and then a couple of 100 yards away, that owl is answered by a hawk or a different bird, and they sit there and go back and forth, and maybe even go 2 or 3 different birds in the calls, or even a coyote mixed in there, or a fox, or something like that. And you're telling these people, that's not a fox, that's not a coyote, that's something else going on here, and they're like, oh, you're just full of crap.
Well, one night I was at my location, and you know, you try to figure out, is that an owl or is that something imitating an owl? So this was a very beautiful owl call, and it came close, and it came within about 40 yards of me, and then it turned into a fox. You know, it went from an owl in this tree to a fox at this tree. And, you know, you want to think, okay, I mean, why would a fox, I mean, a small fox could easily be a victim of a large owl, you know, and so why would a fox identify itself at the bottom of a tree that its predator was sitting in? So it doesn't make sense. So you think if you do what we do and you go out in the woods trying to figure out the logic of it, you think, well, I just witnessed an illogical thing in the woods. A potentially prey animal, a small fox, barking at a tree that an owl just vocalized in. And I thought it was not either of those. I thought, well, you know what I thought it was, you know.
Yeah,
and I thought that was my cue. That was my hint to see. Okay, Webb, can you figure out here? You know, here's your little clue. Can you figure out who this is and what's going on? And a lot of times the people that are out there with us, you know, they're straining, and of course that's fine to strain to come up with an alternative hypothesis for what's going on. But here's what Bruce McCormick said to me. My PhD friend said to me, Webb, the chances that an owl on steroids is in cahoots with a coon to steal your fritters behind your back is less parsimonious than your Sasquatch theory. So you know,
that's the key. You know, that is a very good analogy, is because that's kind of what I'd like to put to a lot of people is like, okay, you know what?
Yeah.
You've heard what I've heard. You've witnessed what I've witnessed, and you're still not believing. Give me your theory.
Yeah.
Tell me what is going on here, because I won't even say, you know, I'm not going to dispute what you say or anything. I want you to research it and come back in a week, a month, however long it takes you to research it, and you tell me where you find a precedent for hearing songbirds in the middle of the night. Give me a precedent where you hear of a predator and a prey animal that are communicating with one another. In the middle of the night. You know,
absolutely.
If you can find precedent, if you can find scientific precedent on this, I'll listen. I will read it. I will be open-minded to it. And of course, I always get the, man, you look for Bigfoot, you're nuts. You know, and I'm going, really? I'm not nuts whenever I'm doing other things, but just when I'm looking for Bigfoot.
Right. Well, you guys, of course, I'm sure you've heard of Tom Powell, who wrote The Locals. Tom Powell is a science teacher up in Oregon, and he set out to, he was going to teach the scientific method. Excuse me, he was going to teach the scientific method, and he was using Bigfoot as an example of pseudoscientific stuff. And so, but our irony is the more that Tom Powell got involved in looking at the Bigfoot question, trying to poo-poo it, the more he became just immensely interested in it, and he finally saw, hey, this is really a phenomenon. And he went from being a skeptic trying to use that as a contrary to science methodology to becoming one of the well-known writers and researchers in the Bigfoot field. So he convinced himself of the other, trying to prove it wasn't a phenomenon. He proved it was a phenomenon to himself. So I think that's what happens. I think if people get in now, here's the other thing. You know, if I were going to present an ethological study on the southern red wolf, nobody would say, "Oh, you didn't hear one, you didn't see one." I mean, I might get a question, but I wouldn't get the kind of skepticism that I get for Bigfoot. You know, nobody says to David Meck, "You didn't see those wolves." Nobody says to Peter Marler, "You didn't interact with those songbirds." But if we go out there and we have something strange happen, then we get, you know, laughed at and disrespected over our efforts. But you know, truly, these guys don't cooperate very well. But nevertheless, the same kinds of reports that would make it into animal science journals don't even get looked at by people in the scientific academy.
We have a caller, but I'm going to check real quick and make sure that they're not just listening in. So
Right.
Can y'all hold on just a minute?
Sure.
Caller
Hey there.
601 area code. If you're just listening in, don't say anything. But if you have a question, speak up.
Oh yeah, this is Brian Ippy. This is Brian.
Hello,
Yes, bud.
Brian. How you
Hey,
doing?
Brian.
Hey, well here's the thing. An observation and then some comments that y'all can discuss. But on Jeff's land, you know, he's talking about the big rock into the river. And I've seen some recent photos. I know Jeff hadn't talked about it, but a lot of game, a lot of deer. There's been some clear cutting in the area, but I know some people speculate, if you have a disruption on clear cutting or whatever in the forestry, area, that Bigfoot or Sasquatch move on. They don't stay in the area. But the incident Jeff is talking about happened after the clear cutting, and all this game and all the game trails, I don't think, if something is super comfortable with an area, I don't really think it matters. Is my first point. Maybe y'all could talk about that. The other thing I want to talk about, and just throw it out there so y'all can talk about it, I'm agreeing with the mimicry of animals and a possible Sasquatch.
Right.
And here's why I say this. And I've heard it on a CD from Smokey Crabtree. I've heard him tell it from his voice, from him himself.
Right.
He has never had a sighting down in Fouke, the Sulphur River bottoms.
Right.
But he has had enough experience over the years of hearing a small kitten on into like a young goat, an owl, possibly a dog, and then an elephant.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, the Fouke and Sulphur River bottoms is as nasty as it gets. And I've been there. I've been by Crabtree Lake. It's in a different way as nasty or nastier than Sulphur River bottoms, possibly.
Right.
So I'm going to tell you right now, when you have a small kitten and you're hearing it consistently, and then you hear a goat in the freaking swamps, are you kidding me? Okay, so anyway, that's just two subjects that I kind of verifying and kind of going along with you on things that I know and have seen and talked to Smokey Crabtree. He's my witness. Even though, he's my bud and he's not with us anymore. But and that's pretty much all I want to say. But I enjoy y'all talking about it. And I'm sorry I didn't have something for you, Mr. Webb, there. But
well, thank you. That's fine. I think that's those hypotheses are very, very valid and you know, a lot of people have those kind of experiences, and I've heard babies crying. I've heard dogs that were way out of place, you know, no dog around, and I've heard dogs barking. I've heard one night I was in South Arkansas, and I had a flat tire, and I was waiting to get some help to get this tire taken care of. It was about midnight, and I heard some coyotes approaching, and then I heard, as clear as I'm talking to you, something said, "Yite." It was a female voice. It was a sort of a high-pitched female voice. There's nothing around me in the woods, and the voice said, as if it was a contraction of, "Are you all right?" It said, "Yite." And then about 20 minutes later, it moved to the other side of the road, the other side of the woods, and said, "Yite" again.
Oh,
and
my
so,
God.
Yeah, so, I mean, it just, and you never have the recorder on. I mean, I've got a couple of vocalizations.
That's Bigfoot luck right there. Never.
Yeah.
Never.
Yeah.
Only time I was ever
Even that
bored
the
at.
buddies did.
Yeah.
I was bored at one time, and I was setting up equipment.
Yeah.
And as I was setting up the equipment, I was roared at.
Yeah.
Of course, it didn't roar after it was on, but.
Brian, are you still with us?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Why don't you describe to them whenever you went with me on the first trip down into my bottom of what you experienced?
Well, it was kind of twilight, you know, a little bit of light left, enough to, I'd say it's more light than dark. And Jeff's got so much land that it was just a part of the land where we just drove off in the woods and, okay, this looks good, like a great flat spot. We'll camp here, and he was showing me how to live off the land and have a sleeping on the ground experience that wasn't the best for me, but it was lovely for him.
That's the way Sasquatch do it, you know.
Oh, my gosh. I didn't sleep that night. But as it was twilight and we're catching some little fish out of the stream, and he was showing me how to cook it and so forth, a good little camp situation. And we hear this, I mean, you know, there's some echoes in these little hollers and valleys and stuff that he's got on his land, but we hear this like that, and it actually, it echoed a little bit, but as best we could tell, and especially Jeff, it was within 100 to, 150 feet behind him.
Right.
And I did the old 3-point stance. I'm about to track start out of there. And, you know, not that I'm 100% green, but I wasn't exactly prepared.
Yeah.
And
I know what you mean.
This was loud. It was, and I didn't describe it very extremely well, but it was enough to scare the crap out of me. And it wasn't dark, but it was very twilight. And I instantly, and I'm getting chill bumps now, but I instantly said, Jeff, I kind of questioned him, like, okay, well, what's that, you know, kind of. And he's like, well, let me give you a laundry list of what it's not. And I can't explain what it is, but kind of is what he explained. Yeah. But I can tell you it's not a wolf, it's not a bear, there's no real bears here. Yeah. On and on and on and on. And, you know, I've come to find out as time goes on, Sasquatch may be able to mimic animals, but there's really nothing that could mimic ape-like
I think that's correct. Yeah.
So,
now,
go ahead, I'm sorry.
I'll make a comment here because a lot of our listeners may think, oh, an elephant is not indigenous to North America. How would a Sasquatch hear and imitate an elephant? Well, I'm going to tell you what I think they do. I think they come up to the window. I wouldn't be surprised to hear a Sasquatch say, "Here's Johnny." Of course, you guys probably don't remember Johnny Carson. But I think they come up, I think they peek in the window, and I think they listen to our TV shows and things like this. And I think that it's quite possible that if you hear an elephant in the woods and you're in the Sasquatch woods and you think, how could that be? I think that they're able to have access to all kinds of stuff by peeking in the window and listening to what we listen to, the radio and the TV and stuff like that. So I think that's
or
the
possibly
explanation.
They could have a territory very near a zoo.
You could, yeah. Now, the when I first found my scat sample, I thought that the property that I was on was a Sasquatch a school, a kindergarten for Sasquatch, because I found a lean-to, and then I found a prototype lean-to where somebody had obviously tried to imitate that. I found marks where something had gouged bark out of the tree, and something at a much lower level had gouged bark out of the tree. And you could observe a place, it's a four-way stop up in the country where oil trucks and things like that, they stop and they check their tires and they get out and they kibitz and talk about things. And so I think, and then about 600 yards away was a chimpanzee retirement facility next door to a human prison. So you have a chimp retirement facility, and next door you have a human prison where it's like a human zoo. You can watch people come and dunk basketballs and you know, hobnob with each other during their outdoor break. So the place where I was, I began to realize, was a perfect, if you were a Sasquatch and you wanted to learn about humans and all other kinds of stuff, this was a perfect little habitat to do that, and I think that's exactly what they did. I think the prison is now closed, but Fort Wade was the name of it. It's just over the line from Texas there, but I think that they came there to observe humans, and I think that's how I got lucky, and I got the samples that I got that got me started. So I think that's, you know, that's what they do, is they watch us. That's their hobby.
Yeah, I agree.
It could be.
I think so.
And back to the cutover
about
that Eric was talking.
Two minutes. So.
Well, Eric was talking about the cutover. I don't think they necessarily leave. I used to think the triangle meant warning, humans are moving in, we got to move out. But I no longer think that's what a triangle means. I think it's a bit of a welcoming or a blessing. I've had other people give me other ideas, but I don't think they necessarily leave when oil field people come in or cutovers happen and timber companies come in. You know, it's certainly possible, but I think that they're kind of like coyotes. They're more adapted to our civilized ways than we realize. And as a matter of fact, I wouldn't be surprised. I think they may foster coyote pups and generate their own hunting pack by having a female coyote pup that they raise, an orphan pup, and then she, you know, the coyote pack forms around the female. And I think that they, just like we would have a bunch of tree and walkers, you know, we go out in the woods with tree and walkers, I think they go out in the woods with a coyote pack, and sometimes you hear a vocalization amongst the coyotes that's clearly not a coyote.
Yes, sir.
And I'm sure Jeff has had that experience, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, lots of times. And, you know, here's a key piece of I don't want to call it, you know, factual information. This is just a key piece of Jeffism, I guess you would say.
Right.
These creatures are not unlike us in a lot of ways.
Right.
In most ways. They are smart. They're adaptive. They use tools. They build structures.
Right.
They protect themselves. They protect their young. They protect their family unit. And if I'm a firm believer that if they can utilize a coyote, a stray dog, or whatever as a tool in order to benefit them and more easily, excuse me, my tongue's not wanting to work, more easily obtain a meal.
Yeah.
And we've also got to imagine if they assimilate these wild dogs or coyotes into their family unit as a pet or a tool, When times get hard and food is scarce, they have a ready food source right there that I'm sure they sacrifice and utilize.
Probably so. I mean, we do that with our guns.
I have no factual, exactly. You know, we have pastures full of cattle, goats, different animals, chickens in a coop. I mean, we've got all kinds of things that we do. And I'm going to tell you, there's something else that I wrote a paper some years ago, actually on my theory on the size and stuff. But in that, I also wrote about Sasquatch using other animals to hide themselves.
Right.
That's just like you're saying, the coyotes. Because even as a coyote hunter, I'm a person that goes and removes these predators from people's land for them.
Right.
I do that quite often.
Yeah.
I wouldn't even walk into the middle of a pack of coyotes. If I hear 20, 30, 10, whatever coyotes howling and having a fit 100 yards from me, I'm not going to go walk into the middle of those coyotes. I may set up back here and try to snipe those coyotes when they come out, but I'm not going to go walk up in the middle of them. Yeah. And that's the same thing. You know, if you've got a pack of coyotes, that's, 10 coyotes, that's 20 eyeballs on top of what the Bigfoot has. That's nostrils smelling that are hundreds, thousands of times better than ours. Hearing, I mean, it doesn't take much to figure out why you can't walk up on them, why you can't sneak up on them if they've got all this going for them that you and I don't have.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that probably that's another woodscraft that the Sasquatch really have us in the dark about. They probably are very intuitive. They are probably very in tune with what other animals are experiencing, what they're meaning, probably, they can listen to the crows and say, here comes Jeff, or here comes Webb, or whoever.
I agree.
Well, I have another deal that I want to get your opinion on here. Another thing I'm
going to have to make it
on.
quick, Jeff, before we run out. They're going to shut us off here in a minute.
Roadkill.
Right. Good
How many
question.
times have we all went down the road? You drive by, you see a deer ran over. The very next day you drive back by, that deer is gone. It's not just been eaten on by coyotes. It's not been drugged 10 feet or anything. It's just totally gone. There's no tractor tracks where the counties come in with a front end loader. There's no signs of anything vehicle-wise pulling in the grass to get this deer. I think, one of my theories, I think that some of these Bigfoot are utilizing our roadways and our public transportation stuff. And I think that they're waiting for their opportunity, run out there, snatch up a deer that's been hit by a car that's semi-fresh and haul butt with it.
Well, that's one of the theories. One of the theories from Honobia was that these guys were spotlighting some deer, and the Sasquatch were grabbing them before they could get the carcass. So I think they do probably do that. I think they're just opportunists in every way.
Well, guys, it's been a great show. Great show. We really thank you, Webb, for coming on. It's
my pleasure. I'm honored to do it. And let me just tell you that if folks want to get in touch, my Facebook page is Samuel Webb Sentell. All my stuff is on there. I've made it all public ever since the press conference with the Genome Project. I've gone public with everything. Just friend me if you want to look at my stuff, and you can get to all the photos and videos and everything. And you're welcome to peruse all that stuff.
And
hopefully I'll have some more.
Enjoyed talking with you. It's been way too long since we've talked.
Yeah. Well, I can't wait. I'm gonna have to come over there and get you to show me around, and maybe that junior will jump out of the tree and show himself for us.
Well, I tell you, you know, I got a lot of deer hunters and things that are going to be on my property up until probably the 1st of January, and then after the 1st of January, it calms down, and from January till May, that's when I'm out there every single day, and things get really exciting.
Well, we'll plan for the springtime then. I'll come in the springtime, and we'll make an excursion of it.
Absolutely.
Sounds good.
Sounds like a plan to me.
Absolutely. We can count on it.
Well, Webb, thanks
you again,
and,
guys. I appreciate you.
Thank you so much for coming
week,
tonight.
Next week we have Joseph Lippo from Alabama. So everyone tune in, same time, same bat channel, and everybody better say good night.
Good night.
Good night, y'all.
Good night.